Welcome to Theology in 3. Pastor Michael Fueling with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the Abrahamic covenant. Now, when people think of this, they often think it's the same thing as the Old Covenant or the Mosaic covenant, and these are not the same. They are separate, distinct covenants that God makes with his people. Now, before we get to the details of the Abrahamic covenant, let's first define what is a covenant. A covenant in the Bible and in the ancient Near East, it's a sacred contract between two parties. And we see in the Bible is that the way God relates to his people is through covenants. So we've already looked at the Noahic covenant, the Old Covenant, Mosaic covenant, Davidic covenant, the New Covenant. There's a bunch in the Bible, but we're looking at today is the Abrahamic covenant. So let's jump into the details of this Abrahamic covenant. We want to learn 4 encouraging facts about this. Number 1, the Abrahamic covenant is what's called an unconditional covenant. So in the Bible, there are 2 kinds of covenants. The first is conditional, meaning if you want the blessings of the covenant, that is conditional upon your obedience. And if you want to avoid the cursings of a covenant, then that is conditional on your obedience. And so we find with the Abrahamic covenant is that it's not conditional, but it is unconditional, meaning it's unilateral, meaning that God makes a promise and he intends to keep his promise to Abraham, whether or not Abraham and his descendants obey or disobey. Number 2, the Abrahamic covenant, it comes with 3 specific unconditional promises to the nation of Israel and to the spiritual descendants of Abraham. Those 3 unconditional promises are land, the promised land Israel, number 1. Number 2 is that Israel and Abraham would be a special blessing. Through Abraham's lineage would come someone that would bless the entire world. That would be Jesus. And then number 3, that Abraham would have innumerable offspring. God brought Abraham outside. He said, look at the stars, so shall your offspring be. And so these are 3 unconditional promises that God gave to Abraham. Number 3, the Abrahamic covenant was humanly impossible due to Sarah's age. In fact, she was so old that when Abraham heard that he would have innumerable offspring, he laughed out loud, and God absolutely proved him wrong because God made a promise. And when God makes a promise, he keeps his promise every single time. But number 4, the Abrahamic covenant was established by a blood sacrifice. You can read all about this in Genesis chapter 15, verse 7 to 18. But this blood sacrifice, it pointed to the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And this blood sacrifice of Jesus Christ inaugurated and sustained the Abrahamic covenant, a once for all, forever unilateral covenant that God made with Abraham and all of his descendants, that he would bring them to a promised land, that they would be a blessing to the whole world, and that their offspring, the spiritual descendants of Abraham, would be more numerable than the stars of the sky.